Lawrenceville Highway, Gwinnett County, Georgia, otherwise known as Highway 29. You go down this road, and in 10 minutes, you will see the entirety of the United Nations. On your left, you will see taquerias. On the right, you will see Korean churches completely in Hangul. And down the street, we all see that familiar sight of a halal grocery store speaking Hindi, Gujarati, Bengali, and Urdu. But going down this street, you see all this richness, but something has to be missing here because it doesn't feel connected. That's exactly what has fueled my work here. Because when you go down these streets, you see tiny, diverse islands beaming with richness, beaming with culture, but there's no bridges in between them. And so you see two key messages when you talk to the people behind these closed doors. One is that they don't feel connected to anyone outside of their own community. And two is that they feel ignored and distrust, fueling that ever so cycle that we see in our modern world today. My name is Akbar Ali, and I am many things. I am first vice chair of my local Democratic Party. I'm a small business owner. I'm a brother, and I am a son, and I am a candidate for State House. However, one thing that I decided to do was not as a candidate, not as someone asking a favor, but as everyone's neighbor. I went to every single minority-owned business, recreation center, and places of worship within the State House district that I am running for. I did this by bringing along a friend of mine that can translate for me into Spanish. Because right now, what we see are those two key points that I mentioned earlier. This is the consequences of isolation. What we see right now is an immense lack of trust from even your neighbor. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the people that own these businesses that are within these ethnic communities. You live next to a neighbor for 25 years, but you don't trust them enough to learn their name. Can you imagine that? And so the result of this is that you don't feel connected to your own community, don't feel connected to the area that you live in, and you just feel like a hotel guest, if anything. And second of all, there's a lack of transparency and a lack of government resources being used. Our taxpayer dollars that we paid for are not even being utilized because of language barriers, because no one's reached out to these people with the cultural nuances that they need, or even just reached out to them in plain period. And so, one thing I did is that I went to every single one of these centers on the first day of my campaign. Again, not as a political candidate, but simply as these people's neighbors. And despite being a different ethnicity, despite being a different race, despite being a different religion, I went to all of them and just presented myself as who I am. I said, my name is Akbar Ali, and I am your neighbor, first and foremost. And one of the ways that I did this to build a bridge between these communities was by firstly addressing that language barrier. You may have noticed I said I brought a translator with me, AKA just my high school friend, that's all, nothing complicated. And we addressed that language barrier not just in the actual words spoken, but also in the cultural nuances. My friend told me, don't have your arms crossed, don't have an open body language, or other cultural nuances, because I feel like that is lost whenever we try and translate a flyer or translate an ad. It doesn't actually translate the message behind it. Secondly, is that I focused on common ground. I didn't come in there guns blazing, talking about the most divisive issues you can imagine. I focused on commonality, because when you put a 20-something-year-old Pakistani American into a Colombian taqueria, you may have imagined, what's the similarity there? What can you possibly talk about with anybody in that restaurant? Well, I said, I can talk about the same experiences of being an immigrant, making sacrifices for your family, and living within the same area that we see the same potholes in our streets, we see the same lack of services, we see the same level of need here. And by building that, by talking about those issues, talking about the commonalities here, you start to build trust. And that's where my third point comes in. The most important one is that you cannot only come once. You gotta come back. You have to come back. above everything. Because when you come a second time, people don't see it as you looking for a favor, or you looking for a vote, or you looking for anything of that sort. What they see is that they start to introduce you to their family. They start to ask you to pray with them. They start to ask you to come to their cultural events despite being a completely different identity than them. And that's how you build bridges. And that's exactly what the outcome that we're trying to achieve here is. By doing this one simple action, 1 month at a time, routinely, now religious leaders are talking to each other, businesses are working together, and that restaurant that's 500 feet from yours, that your neighbor that you didn't know the name of, now you're having breakfast together. And all that happened simply because you went out and you talked to people. And that's as simple as that. It's never been complicated. It always seems like a huge task, a huge study, a huge $25 million project that we need to put money towards, when in reality, you can just go with a friend. And so that's where I will leave you. I will challenge you to go to your world, because Highway 29 may be my neighborhood. It may be my world at the end of the day, but it is not everyone's world. And so find yours. Take a friend, translate your message, find that common ground, and come back a second time. Because at the end of the day, that's how real change begins. That's how we can get inclusion along with the incredible diversity that we have. And with that being said, thank you for the opportunity to be up on this stage.